She was showcasing her carving skills on the Food Network series Outrageous Pumpkins. And here now to give us some tips to have the best jack-o'-lanterns on the block is Leigh Henderson. Leigh, thank you so much for joining us here on Live in the Bay.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
So exciting to talk about some pumpkin carving skills. I know I absolutely need it. But before we get there, I have to ask you, what was it like being on that show and being able to showcase your skills in front of the top pumpkin carvers in the country?
So much fun. So much fun. Everybody on the show is an amazing artist, and the fact that I was able to play in that league was thrilling. So much fun.
Well, it says a lot about your skills, and we have to get into that now. So maybe you can help me sharpen up my skills. But first and foremost, how do we pick the best kind of pumpkin when it comes to carving pumpkins?
It depends what you're trying to do, and there's always a risk because, like, it's a natural thing. You can't ever be sure. But my first tip is if you're doing something simple, you're a novice carver, you're working with kids, a pumpkin like this that is kind of lighter in color and smoother, as opposed to like this one is darker in color.
Yeah.
This one's probably going to be a softer flesh, easier to carve. It's not going to take detail as well, so if you want to do detail, you might look for a darker, harder pumpkin.
Interesting.
But if you're just doing something simple, jack-o'-lantern, I like these light-colored, smooth ones.
And especially for the kids, right?
Yep.
Because like you said, this is going to be easier to kind of get into.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Now that we know how to pick a pumpkin, the next step is how to prep a pumpkin.
Yes.
How do we do that, Leigh?
Well, and this is something not everybody knows how, but it's really important for a successful jack-o'-lantern is we all know you're going to scoop out your pumpkin.
Yes.
But, so one tip, I cut this little notch in my lid, which means I always know how my lid's going to fit back on.
Okay, I have to show that to everybody here that we see here. It just cuts a little notch. So I know you're used to the normal round cut, but right here, cut this little notch. And like she said, that helps you, boop, pop it right back in. Okay.
And then you want to make sure your pumpkin is the right thickness. Some of these guys have a couple inches, and that's a lot to carve through. I like to scrape them down to about 3/4 of an inch. You can just get this at like any Halloween store, any craft store, and it's really great. You can just scrape the inside, comes off, and then you wind up with a nice thin pumpkin. Again, it's going to be easier to cut through.
Okay, so that helps prep it when we, like you said, you kind of shave off a little bit of that so it's not too thick, not too thin. But what about the design and when it comes to designing the pumpkin?
You know, you can make a pumpkin as simple or as complex as you want to. It's all up to you. I find it helps a lot to think it through beforehand. So you can draw it on the pumpkin. If you do, use a washable marker because a permanent marker is going to be hard to come off. I also like a red one because then it's not going to stain the flesh of the pumpkin the same way like a blue marker would.
Yeah.
But what I really like to do is draw my pattern out beforehand on a piece of paper. That way I can see exactly how it's going to fit on the pumpkin. I can work on that detail before I'm trying to draw on the pumpkin. Tape it to the pumpkin, I can carve right through that.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this actually is the easiest way to do that. Maybe just paste, draw something on a piece of paper, and then now paste that.
Yep, that's how I like to do it.
And then once you do this, do you remove it or do you cut through it?
I cut right through it.
Okay, so then the next step, like you said, after we draw it, we take the cutting tools and then we cut it through the paper, right?
Yeah, although you don't have to cut all the way through the pumpkin everywhere. So if you cut all the way through in some places, but just kind of shave the flesh away in other places, you get a nice variation of color. But both of those things you can do right through the pumpkin. So if I'm not going all the way through, I like to use an X-Acto knife. You get a lot of detail, but you could also do it with like a kitchen paring knife that you have in your house.
And what other tools do you use, Leigh? Besides the two knives, what other tools might people need to get the best results for pumpkin carving?
Well, definitely, if you're doing a jack-o'-lantern, you want to have some kind of little saw like this. And again, you can get these at like any Halloween store, any craft store. And these are great because they're not very sharp. They're hard to hurt yourself with. They're great for kids. And they have a lot of maneuverability because it's a thin blade. You can get a really sharp curve really easily, which you can't do with a knife that has like a thicker blade. So if you're making a jack-o'-lantern, you want a little saw of some kind like this. If you're doing something more sculptural,
like so.
Like this, right? This is where you would use this kind of loop tools, which are for, with these guys, you can just shave away the flesh to get
And that's more like sculpting.
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
more sculpting. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the pumpkin over here. Big elephant in the room over here. We can't not talk about this guy. He's amazing, by the way.
Okay.
Walk us through how you did this entire sculpture.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason I brought this is I want to show you some of these little techniques you can also apply on a simpler scale to your own jack-o'-lantern.
Perfect, and maybe we can give it a little try.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like I said, you sculpt the main shapes in with your loop tools. But then you're not limited to just using a pumpkin. I like to add a whole bunch of other features, right? So you can have radish teeth, radish eyes. This is a little lime skin. He's got his radish clown nose. Hair and eyebrows are yam, right? And so you can do it really detailed like this, or you can use those same techniques to jazz up your little jack-o'-lantern really easily, right? If we want him to have a clown nose.
I would love him to have a clown nose. Can we put a clown nose on him?
So I've just got a radish on a toothpick.
And we're gonna move these, that way our viewers can see this incredible little pumpkin over here.
And you just stick that right in.
Look at that, that changes him completely. Right? I love. So then when you do that, you basically just take any type of little vegetable you want, right? And stick it through.
Yeah, like look around the kitchen. There's all sorts of fun things you can do. This is a little slice of sweet potato. These are some carrots. So if you wanted to make ears, here, you want to do the other ear?
Yeah, let's put.
This is just a little sweet potato.
Where would you put them? Maybe on the sides
here?
Yeah,
they kind of line up with the eye a little bit on the side.
Hopefully mine isn't crooked. My guy doesn't have crooked ears.
Stick his little ear on.
Look at that.
You could give him some little hair with these carrots.
Let's give him a couple more. Let's give him some little hair.
We need some more toothpicks.
So
toothpicks are great. You can also super glue onto a pumpkin.
Look at how cute he is. I think we should name him. Love it. Okay, so these are absolutely wonderful tips. I want to bring it really quick back to the show and how you were able. Did you use these exact same tips when you were carving your sculptures?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I learned a lot on the show about using different kind of produce for different features, different colors. That's what really makes it pop, right? You get all those different colors instead of just an orange pumpkin.
And we actually are taking a look at the show on the screen here, which is pretty cool. Looks like you guys had a great time.
We had such a good time. It's a little chaotic, but we had such a good time.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Leigh, for coming on the show and giving us the expert tips on how to carve a pumpkin. We truly appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
To check out outrageous pumpkins for yourself, we'll have a link on our website at liveinthebay.tv.